if AI keeps going on this rocket ship, there's no plausible way in which the machines don't outcompete us.
When we look at 2026 and the immediate future, what changes do you see coming?
The big elephant in the room overhanging everything else is AI. This is just, it's a rocket ship that we're on. And it's one of those things where even with all the hype, it still deserves that hype. All of the key properties that we see, costs improving dramatically, capabilities improving dramatically. When you put those two things together with any new technology, you're going to see extremely rapid adoption of that new technology. But for now, I think 2026 is going to be, probably going to be the year where we really start seeing these capabilities affecting industries in a significant way. They're leaving the stage of being a gimmick, and they're entering the stage where they're actually genuinely useful. And so I think this could be a breakout year for artificial intelligence.
The thing that I don't understand is like, okay, if AI replaces all the jobs, then what does everybody do, right? Because if you replace the jobs, then nobody has money to buy the thing that, like, how does that math?
Yeah, that's exactly the right question to ask. And the truth is, let me say this at the very beginning, nobody has an answer for that question. That's the proverbial $64 trillion question that civilization has to answer. Humanity has to answer this because we are moving into a new paradigm. My team is working on this. We're modeling it. We're simulating it. We're trying to find out whether, for example, proposals for a universal basic income. Basically, you have in a democracy, you would agree that your government provides money, provides currency as an income, a basic income to everybody so that they continue to have that purchasing power. We don't have all the answers yet, but the sense of urgency is there. And I'm optimistic. And a lot of people are thinking very seriously about this. But I have to say, most of that is behind the scenes at the moment. There's a facade in front of us right now. If you listen to politicians in Washington, D.C., or the CEOs of the big tech giant companies, with one or two exceptions, they're mostly singing the same tune. Don't worry about AI. Don't worry about robots. It's still a long way off, and they're going to create more jobs for people than they're going to displace. That's the story we're getting right now. The truth is that is a fiction. In the longer term, that's a fiction. On a sort of 15 to 20 year time horizon, if AI keeps going on this rocket ship, there's no plausible way in which the machines don't outcompete us by around 2040 in pretty much every domain. So right now we're having the wool pulled over our eyes about the long-term prospects of this a little bit. In the short term, it's true. Not everybody's going to lose their job next year. But it's an illusion, a delusion for our leaders to be telling us there's nothing to worry about here. There's nothing to see here. That's dishonest, I think. And the conversations I participate in behind closed doors with some of these folks, they're not under that illusion or delusion themselves. But I'm optimistic because I'll give you two reasons fundamentally why I'm optimistic about this. Because I don't want to leave this this question on a doom and gloom, disappointing, dismaying note. I'm super optimistic about this for two reasons. The first is energy, and the second is labor itself. Okay, what do I mean by that? The reason why anything at all, any good and service you can name, point to anything in your life or anything in the supermarket or anything around us that's valuable, the reason why it has a price tag on it is because it took a significant amount of energy and a significant amount of someone's labor to put that thing together, to make it, to get it to you, to distribute it, to package it up, to get it in front of you, to deliver it into your life, and so that you can make use of it. Any good and service is like that. And what I mean by that, and what we say in economic terms, is energy and labor are the fundamental factors of production. They go into making everything else. And what the great news is for being optimistic here is that as energy and labor become cheaper, so does absolutely everything else. As labor and energy become abundant, especially if they stay clean, which they will with today's technologies, everything else becomes abundant and available too. And what this means is that even if we lost our jobs, because all of these robots and AIs are doing all of the work, the work still gets done. In fact, probably way more work gets done. And if machines can do 10 times as much work as humans ever could, that means 10 times as much goods and services are around. And in principle, that could translate into vastly greater abundance and prosperity that we could, if we make good social choices together as societies, that we could distribute in fantastic ways. So what that means is, with these new technologies, our jobs are threatened, but abundance and prosperity could explode. And that's the prize that we have to keep our eyes on.
I'm going to apologize a little bit in advance because I feel like I'm going to come after you like you're personally responsible for the situation that's happening. But like the idea that, oh, we haven't solved or really come up with an answer for the fundamental problem we're about to create, that sounds really bad to me. Like, oh, what's this landing on the bottom of the cliff like? Well, we don't know, but we're going to jump anyway. Like,
right.
Wait a minute, that sounds like a really bad idea. Should we have figured this out and then done what we're going to the cliff, so to speak?
Absolutely. I mean, in any sensible,
right,
sensible world, absolutely. Oh my gosh! And it's two problems actually. The one is sort of the nuts and bolts economics problem of job displacement, reorganizing society, labor markets, all of that jazz. That sort of down to earth, and yeah, that's going to be such a huge thing. We should have figured it out in advance. Had we had the option, had the system's dynamics allowed for that, and unfortunately it doesn't. The reason why is because we're in what we call arms race conditions, where in order to capture this prize that the technology offers, or all of the benefits that it has to offer, it's a race to obtain that capability, that technology first, because we're worried about others beating us to the finish line. And when I say others, the main contest that we hear about in the AI domain is between basically American technology companies, with the government playing a supportive role, and China in the same sort of dynamic, with the Chinese government playing a larger role. And the thinking is it really matters who wins that race. And so we can't pause. We can't stop to get things figured out ahead of time. But then there is this other major concern, which is a little more out into the stratosphere kind of thing. And that is the so-called Terminator scenario, where we're worried that if we create powerful enough AI, then it could turn on humanity and be a threat to us. And shouldn't we figure out that what's called the alignment problem? Shouldn't we make sure we know how to build these AI systems so that if one day they have this proverbial waking up moment, they become these systems or the technology becomes powerful enough that it ceases to be under humanity's control? Will that be a good thing or bad thing for us? Is it going to be amazing because this is going to be a benevolent, super intelligent system that can help us solve problems? Or is it going to be the Terminator scenario and decide we're a nuisance and get rid of us? That's a real risk. I mean, I don't personally factor that risk as being enormously high, but it's not zero. And we haven't got that figured out before we're running this arms race either. So yeah, this is not the way we would do it if we were perfectly rational, but we're in an arms race.
I mean, it seems to me, looking at it from afar, it's either great or terrible. Is that the future that we're looking at? That we're either looking at heaven or we're looking at hell?
The more powerful the tool, the more extreme the benefits and the harms could potentially be. Since this is perhaps the most powerful tool ever, then that means that the stark difference between the benefits and the harms that tool could create that's the most extreme one could imagine as well. And then, of course, that translates into very, very high stakes of getting this right. Which also then gets back to your question of, if the stakes are so high, why didn't we stop to figure this out a little better to begin with? And again, we're back in this catch-22 of the arms race.
It's the rock and the hard place. Is there any push universally or worldwide to just say, you know what, everybody, stop. Maybe we shouldn't do this?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, there was a call from the technology community with policymaker support in Washington to structure this a little better. Slow things down is maybe well, there was a letter that had a very large number of prominent signatories from the technology community that circulated that was calling for a slowdown or a pause on AI development, to answer these very, very enormously important high stakes questions. And there was an attempt to slow things down on the regulatory side, or at least get things a little more narrowly guardrailed than they otherwise would have been. Unfortunately, or for better or worse, depending on how you look at it, within these arms race conditions around the world, that slowdown did not take. So there have been some efforts on that front, but those efforts were overwhelmed by this competitive pressure to stay in the lead in this race.
How does that work necessarily when I would imagine that AI would potentially be replacing certain kinds of jobs first and other kinds of jobs later, where you've kind of have half of the population that is suddenly unemployable and the other half is like, well, I still got a job, so I'm not doing that. Like, is this the kind of thing that you think is going to have, no matter how it goes, a very rough patch?
I was absolutely guilty of assuming that AI would put the unskilled labor at risk first, and the skilled labor, human skilled labor, would be safer for longer. Not forever, but for longer. And what we've seen is actually, if not the total reverse of that, then at the very least, it's more even. But it looks more like it's going to be the reverse. For example, it surprised many of us that AI was able to so quickly generate art and images, for example. So that's been a surprise, and it could be that we have a little bit of breathing room for a couple of esoteric reasons. I'll just mention one, because we don't need to get too far down into the technical weeds here, I don't think. But when robots start marching out of the factories that are developing them in a breakneck pace, especially in the U.S. and in China, when they start coming out of these factories and being put to use, they're not going to be able to put a experienced plumber out of work on day one. They're barely going to be able to fold laundry on day one. But what they are going to be able to do are a lot of the little things that are a nuisance, or that would be frustrating for a human to do, and that you wouldn't pay a person to do because it wouldn't be worth it, but that nevertheless would still be nice to get done. And what we call this in economics jargon is latent demand for labor. And what that means is that there's all sorts of work that we would love to get done if we look around the world, just picking up the trash that's around us on the street or something. But it is for whatever reason, we don't pay minimum wage or higher for that work to get done, and so the work doesn't get done. But the work could get done if someone were willing to do it cheaply enough. Now, it would be immoral, it would be wrong, it would be inhumane to have a person work for $1 an hour picking up trash. But robots? Sure, why not? Now, that's just one example, but there may be a large number, hundreds, thousands of things like that across the economy and throughout our society, uses for these machines that we can put them to before they displace the entire career, the entire job description, all of the tasks that, say, for example, a plumber or an electrician or a physician or an architect or a scientist does. And that may give us some runway for a soft landing rather than just smashing into the into the ground after we jump off the cliff kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, it ultimately has to be a soft landing, because if not, then the people revolt to be really dramatic, and then we ban it all outright, right? Like, you kind of have to have a soft landing at some point that goes through there. Is there any, when you kind of look geographically speaking, are there areas of the world that, like, oh, they're really going to benefit from this first?
There are places that have energy advantages, and energy factors into AI. Energy factors into robots. So if you have very, very abundant energy, then it's going to be more feasible to run huge AI data centers, many of them, and huge fleets of hundreds of thousands, millions or more robots, because those are going to use a lot of electricity. But those two things, AI and robots, are going to use a lot of electricity. In case you're wondering why China is building enough solar panels that it's basically enough to power the United States. They're doing that every 2 or 3 years at this point, the rate they're building solar. It's unbelievable to build out. That is the reason why they're anticipating that need, that demand for all of that electricity. Who adopts these technologies first, and how successfully they onboard them. And what my team believes is that it's unlikely for the winners of that process to be the entrenched leaders in today's status quo, what we call the incumbent centers of power and influence today. And the reason why is because wherever the status quo works the best today, there's going to be the most resistance to any change to it, right? And so what we see throughout history is that it's often out on the edges of power and that incumbency that new technologies are embraced and utilized, and then a new center of leadership springs out of that. And that we see that over and over and over again. So, for example, it wasn't just in recent memory, it wasn't Washington, D.C., where the internet and the computer and the digital revolution all took root and emerged. And it wasn't in Manhattan, and it wasn't in Los Angeles and these other massive centers. It was Silicon Valley, which in the 1970s and 1980s was sort of out on the edges of things. It wasn't right at the center of power of the status quo in the 1970s and 1980s. That's just one recent example in living memory. So I think we're likely to see something similar.
How long in your mind, and right, like just throwing out a prediction in the sense, how long do we go from kind of the difficult period to the paradise period, in the sense where, like, okay, it's taking jobs, it's starting to get going, people are starting to get hit by it, so to speak. How long do we go from kind of that period to where it can, no, now we're in prosperity? Like, how soft of a soft landing do we need to have? Like, what's the time? Does this make sense what I'm asking? I think I'm
sure. Well,
not saying it very well, but I think you get what I'm saying. Like, how long do we go, like, how long do we have to go through hell to get to heaven?
I would be very surprised if the story weren't mostly told by 2045, 20 years from now. At the other end, how fast could it go? Well, this is where the past isn't that great of a guide. Things didn't change as fast in 1525, the year 1525, as they do in the year 2025. And it was a different world. And now information and everything else moves at the speed of light, basically. And so it's things can happen faster. So what would be about the most rapid that we would sort of be in the thick of this transformation and really need to be having our arms around this thing? It could be within 5 years. I would be very surprised if we're sort of seeing radical impacts of job displacement and total upheaval of our economic circumstances that are requiring really dramatic action from our governments. I would be surprised if we were in the thick of that before the end of 2027, so 2 years from now. But I would be surprised if we weren't in the thick of it by 2030. So that's my personal team's assessment is we have somewhere between 2 and 5 years, something like that, before we really are in the thick of this because of these arms race conditions.
Are you ready for some harder / listener submitted questions?
Let's go for it.
Has there ever been anything in the past you could compare this technological change to? Like, what would be kind of the closest comparison that we have had in the past?
You really have to reach deep into history to the big ones to get any kind of disruption that's even comparable. And I'm talking the big ones: language, fire, writing, electricity. Those are we're in that strata. This is the big leagues when it comes to technology disruptions. And it could be that artificial intelligence is the very biggest of them. Nuclear weapons is another one. But there are things about AI that are just categorically different and potentially more impactful. In fact, it might even be where you have to sort of expand beyond just human and just technology per se for something comparable. It could be that this is more like the emergence of mammals or the emergence of animals in the history of biology, and to get something that's this big and this profound of a shift. AI, artificial intelligence, is a monumental transformation. It's probably more than just another technology.
Yeah, a true before and after moment. Like, that was the one when as I was asking this question, it was like, oh, fire. Like, there was before fire and there was after fire, and there was totally different. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how prepared do you think we truly are? Prepared not just in terms of economically, but prepared in all aspects of society.
Well, somewhere between a 1 and a 5. And it's probably a logarithmic scale. It's probably not a linear scale.
Right, like the Richter scale for people who aren't familiar, right?
Like, unprepared, honestly. This is a question: is how could you be any better prepared? I mean, I guess if you knew exactly what was going on. I mean, if we'd seen if we were looking through a telescope at an alien civilization and we'd watched them go through this and saw all of the missteps they made and all of the right moves they made, maybe that would let us prepare. But how else are we? I mean, it's an impossible situation we're in. We've never seen or been through anything like this before. So preparation it's almost an impossible task. It's almost an impossibly tall order.
Ending on a more serious kind of one, but this is from somebody like, if you were entering the job market, like, what would you do? What jobs do you think kind of go first? What jobs do you think go last? Like, what would your advice to people be?
Well, so I have children. I mean, I've got 2 daughters. One is 12 years old. So, she would be heading to college, she'd be looking at the job market, she'd be on the thick of it. My perspective on this is that it's, no matter what we think is going to happen, the world will be very different. And whether there are any jobs available or just very, very different jobs that are available for people to do, what you really need to work on, I think what's not going anywhere and what will continue to be valuable, is a person who has the ability, who has the capacity to improve the lives and the world around them. That, I think, is the most important thing. So as cheesy as it sounds, as sort of rosy-eyed and optimistic as it sounds, I think the most important thing to focus on is make yourself into a person who contributes. Make yourself into a person who has these sort of timeless virtues. Are you someone who can enter into any situation, who can join any community and contribute? And I'm encouraging my children to have that at the top of their minds. So that needs to be top of mind with education. It's not about preparing to work a job anymore. It's not about developing the skills or downloading all of the knowledge through your high school and college years that will then, allow you to be competitive in a job market when it's impossible to compete with machines. But instead, it's going to continue to be enormously valuable if you are the kind of person that other people want to be with. If you are the kind of person that can enter into relationships that are constructive, no matter where you go, no matter where you choose to spend your time. If you can be a contributor, if you can be someone that adds to everyone around you, then you're going to be valuable. You will be in demand.
I have a 9 and a 6-year-old. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so anxious about it. It's like, oh, what's your life going to be like? How can I steer you in the right direction when I have no idea which way the right direction is? But that's good advice. Like, it's interesting. I feel like AI can maybe replicate our intelligence and our abilities, but can it be human? Can it do that? Do you think that it will ever get to the point where, like, oh, you could have an AI robot right next to you and you wouldn't know that that's not another human being?
I certainly wouldn't discount that possibility. How soon how far away that moment is, it's too early to tell. I mean, I would be shocked if that was within 5 or 10 years. I would not be surprised at all if it was within 30 years or never. It's unclear still. And I think that the biggest thing that I would say here is that, like any momentous, fork in the road, it feels precarious, and we could make one wrong step and fall to our doom. It's felt like that a number of times throughout human history. And it's not like it's all been smooth sailing. I don't want to say that. But I think I would end with part of this coming out of the DNA of my organization. And that is that we know now more than we've ever known in the past. We're better prepared today to deal with a transformation like this than ever before. We have had the opportunity to learn by looking back over history at how societies have succeeded and failed to onboard new technology and that's caused radical social and economic and political change before. We're better positioned to do that today than ever before, right? And so keep your chin up. The future is enormously bright, and even though we've got we've got some tough travels, a tough journey ahead of us, we can do it. We can absolutely get through this. We will get this figured out. But we're not going to get it figured out alone. We're only going to get it figured out by working together. And that's I guess that's my my sales pitch for why should you be optimistic about our future? Because it's got all the potential in the universe, and it's almost a privilege to live through a moment this wild in the history of humanity. How cool is it to be living in this time, getting to see all of this amazing change at this moment? We're pretty lucky to be on the front lines of all of this.
Oh yeah, that's definitely right. Like, if it goes right, you are living at the fundamental change of the human race.
Pretty cool.
It would be like the sitting around in the cave when somebody figured out fire. Thanks for checking out this episode of Profoundly Pointless. From society and sexuality to science and sports, every week we explore something new from a side of life you may never have heard of. Subscribe if you're interested. There's a playlist, I think, on the right if you want to see more videos like this. Someday I'm going to finish painting that wall, and just for the record, I'm not orange. I just don't know how to fix this. But thanks for checking out the show. Would love to hear from you. Okay, I should stop. Stop. There it is.